So who did you run against for supervisor?
Well, I ran against 7 men. One of whom was Mr. Stephen Balzan from Bolinas, and there were 6 others. And it was of course, in the primary, the field was thinned down to just 2.
2 of you.
And this is one of the ironies of politics. A few more votes, and I would have won in the primary. I didn't. So there was a runoff in November. This was the year that my convictions about the harm done by lobbyists had caused me to espouse the candidacy of Estes Kefauver, because he had run the Senate hearing on Artie Samish and the influence of the lobbyist money in Sacramento. And they sent him to prison. Kefauver sent him to prison. Well, wasn't it natural that I should be on his list of supporters? And I went to the 1952 Democratic Convention in Chicago as a Kefauver delegate.
I'll be darned.
I won election to the Board of Supervisors. It was contested. There was a recount, and I still won. I took my seat on the board, and I had run on a clearly enunciated platform that we needed to have a trained administrator at the head of county government. We'd already demonstrated its value in Mill Valley. And there was a list of 8 things that I wanted to accomplish. We didn't have a park and recreation department, we got it. We didn't have a personnel department, we got it. We didn't have a purchasing department, we got it. We didn't have a public works department, we got it. We didn't have a county council, we got it. All those things were accomplished in the 8 years that I was on the board. But to me, and since we have to hurry, I have to say,
You do indeed.
the thing that capped it all was the final victory over getting Frank Lloyd Wright to design the Civic Center.
That was definitely your baby and the one that we all associate with you. Well, you were very much the advocate of a civic center and finding a new home for this government that had been sprinkled all over the county. There really wasn't room in the courthouse. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, our county government was a hydra-headed monster and very expensive for people to do business with, because to do any business with planning, you had to go out to the old Coleman School. To do business with the welfare department, you had to find the office somewhere on 4th Street. And in fact, there were 13 areas of rented property where county government offices were holding forth. And we desperately needed it all under one roof. And we needed a civic center. And it should be one that was capable of expansion. Because the year that I went on the Board of Supervisors, 1953, saw our population double, the population of our county. It had been truly a rural cow county. And all of a sudden, because, of course, of the building of the bridge and the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge in 1937, many people were moving into Marin, and our problems were burgeoning. So it was essential that we have a civic center. And that was one of the first battles, was how big should it be? And I said we needed 160 acres for not only the Civic Center, but the fairgrounds. For so many years, you know, we had the fair at the Ross Art and Garden Center. But we needed a dual use of our acreage, and it has worked out very beautifully.
And Frank Lloyd Wright, that was your idea, wasn't it?
Well, I did telephone to the chairman of our Civic Center Committee, Mary Summer, who was the head of our planning department. And she was chairman of the Civic Center Committee. Don Jensen, the county administrator, was also on it. Lee Jordan, who was our county counsel, was on it, and the auditor was on it, and the head of Public Works, Marvin Brigham, who was a qualified engineer. That was the Civic Center Committee. And so on New Year's morning in 1957, you see, I had been on the board since the January of '53, and we had moved through these other improvements, and it was time to do something on the Civic Center, and we had the land after a lot of trouble. Who should be the architect? Well, the Civic Center Committee had the responsibility to interview a great many architects. And I called Mary on New Year's morning, and I said, why can't we aim high? Why can't we have Frank Lloyd Wright? And her husband said, why don't you write him a letter?
And you did.
But I never sent it.
Oh.
I never sent the letter.
Oh, dear.
No, well, how could I? I was only one of 5. I had no authority.
But we did get Frank Lloyd Wright.
We did get him, and it's a fascinating story how we did get him. It wasn't without much bloodletting that we got him, but we did finally get him, and it was a triumph of taste for the people of Marin County. They got him.
Right. Well, Vera, certainly that must have been one of the high points of your career in politics. Certainly it is a thing that you're going to be remembered for a long, long, long time. Were there any other things that you remember particularly about that time? Were you persecuted as a woman? Did you have problems on the board?
I had some problems on the board because I was an innovator. You see, I kept coming forward with new ideas all the time, all those new departments that we hadn't had before. And in fact, after I was defeated, it was the dual reason given for my rejection by the voters after 8 years of truly dedicated service was, number one, the tax bill.
That was a trick, though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, because Mill Valley had, while I was on the council, had to bring in tax factors to assure equity in the base of taxation, because there hadn't been reappraisals of taxes of property in Marin for a long, long time. And so the very first summer that I was on the Board of Supervisors, when the assessor came in and asked for 7 new employees, based on my prior experience with the inequity in taxes, I had said, if you get the employees, will you be willing to use the state's measure of value? And he said no, he preferred his own, which was one of viewing and guessing, and also rewarding friends and punishing enemies, and so on. And the entire board agreed that we would not then give the additional employees if there was to be no improvement in the procedures in the assessor's office. And in consequence, we were, each of us, individually hailed before the grand jury to defend ourselves against the charge that we were hampering a public official in the performance of his duties. And I was really able to give chapter and verse to that grand jury about the necessity of equity in the support of government. And out of it grew a reappraisal commission with the state bringing in the state standards. And they are now what operate in Marin County.
But they operated to your disadvantage in the election, is that not so?
They did, because of course the reevaluation meant that a great many of the old estates that had had a free ride for many years were going to have a sudden jump in their assessed value and therefore their taxes. And the little homeowner in the new housing developments that were growing up in Marin County suddenly got some benefit because they had been carrying the load. Well, when the tax bills came out, we had to, under the law, the assessor under law had to put the values into effect in the part of the county where there was more property changing hands. That was Southern Marin, my district. And so all the taxpayers in Southern Marin suddenly got a jolt on their taxes. And my opponent in that case used the slogan, "Look at your tax bill." Now they forgot all the good things that had been accomplished, you know, all the positive things. And so I was punished. However, the other thing was that the opponents of the Civic Center had always claimed that it was an extravagance, that it cost too much, that we paid Mr. Wright too much, etc. But the facts are that it was a true bargain. It had cost $2 a square foot less to construct the administration building at the Civic Center than it had cost to erect a 3-story annex in the center of San Rafael several years earlier.
Oh my.
We got a real bargain. But voters do respond to slogans.
Yeah.
And they respond. And this is one of the cases, I feel, Beth, that exemplifies the difficulty of women in politics, since we still are a minority. And we have to prove ourselves so repeatedly, and people are ready to believe that woman's place, I'd like to say, is in the House, because I mean the House of Representatives. But there are still many who feel that our place is in the home, and it is, but, and this has been a measuring stick through my life, Beth, it takes a man and a woman to make a home. It takes a man and a woman to build a society. It takes a man and a woman to be good parents. And it takes both sexes to govern, because women do have a wisdom and a patience and an innovative spirit and a willingness to try something new. And they have a real contribution to make. And I have always felt that had we had 50% of Congress women, our national policies would have been benefited. I believe very deeply in the merit of women, Beth. I think they have something indispensable to contribute to the family, to the society, to the town, and to civilization.
Do you think most women believe that? Do you think they lack a belief in themselves? We don't have enough, perhaps, women running for office or putting themselves out there. What do you think?
I think they don't put themselves out there because they know how tough it is and how many weapons will be used against them. And then I do think it has taken maturing for women to have the drive to say, I need to be on this Board of Supervisors, I need to be in the legislature, I need to be in Congress. Look how Barbara Boxer has done us proud as our congresswoman from this district. I'm very proud of her. She started on the Board of Supervisors, and I do think that we need to start at the lowest level, the town, grow and take each step and prepare yourself then by experience to really make the contribution that is possible for women.
Well, you certainly made an enormous contribution and became a role model for many, many women. Your name is always the name that comes up for women who are thinking about a possible career in politics, and all of those women hope that they can accomplish what you did. Was it a great disappointment to you when you lost that election?
Beth, it was, I think, the cruelest disappointment I have ever experienced, because I had spent 13 years in public office by then, the City Council of Freeholders, and 8 years on the board. And I had been truly dedicated to the public interest. And it was a grief to me, because all of a sudden, and I'm sure, Beth, that the focus that I had made about government had given me a wealth of knowledge that could only be useful to this county. And then suddenly to have to step down and not make any contribution at all, it was very, very sad for me.
I'm sure.
Well, what did I do? Well, I didn't withdraw my interest in civic affairs. I went on to be interested in a great many things, in the hospital district, in the establishment of a district, then in the building of a hospital. I also have had 30 years now of continuous concern for making it possible for older people to get more out of life. And that is continuing to this day.
So you're still active?
I'm still active.
Adequate.
Yeah, I just got a medallion about 2 weeks ago at the Whistle Stop for 30 years of service, and the final triumph of transforming the old NWP depot into a truly handsome senior center.
I know, it's a wonderful center. Well, you certainly have been a mainstay for that whole Marin Senior Coordinating Council and everyone on it, and I'm still on the board. I've been very grateful.
And it does so much good.
It does wonderful things, doesn't
Yes.
it? Yes, there's a great deal of life down there. Well, tell us about, I know you work for the Marin Senior Coordinating Council. Tell us about your life now. Are you, you're 85?
I'm 85, I'll be 86 in August.
Do you have
Which
more?
is only 4 years from 90.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
14 years from 100. Keep going, Vera.
That's right. Well, you see, Beth, my life now has been curtailed because of my loss of vision. I can't read anymore. And I'm fortunate to have many friends who come to my home every day of the week. Has someone who comes in the afternoon and reads to me whatever I wish them to read. And
What do you wish them to read?
Well, right now I'm having Fuad read me Gorbachev's new book, and it's a fabulous new book. And I'm also reading about the old Russia before the revolution, and trying to get a real perspective of the other great power in this world. I want to know, you know, how we're going to mesh, because we are going to mesh. And of course, we had 4 Russians in Mill Valley Chamber of Commerce the other night, and it was a wonderful, warm, welcoming, informative meeting.
You're not lacking for interest in what's going on around you then, I think.
No, I'm not. All I lack is eyes now.
Oh, that's too bad. But wonderful that you have organized, or that your friends have organized for you, eyes that can keep giving you the information.
I really should honor Josetta Gavin, who is also one of your board members. It was her idea to get these teams of AAUW women to come to the house on a regular basis. And I can't tell you how I look forward every afternoon to that day's visitor. They're all very different. We read very different things. They bring me news from the outside world, but mostly I inhabit 26 Ralston Avenue.
Well, I do see you out and about, though, and whenever I go to a public gathering where Vera Shultz walks in, there's a little stir. Everyone's so glad to see you. Just to conclude our interview tonight, do you have anything that you would like to say? You've been very eloquent on the subject of women. Do you have any thoughts about how you would like to sum up your life? Is there some way you'd like to be remembered?
I would like to be remembered as an American citizen who was born into an era when there was no equality, or very little, for women. And I would like to have the women who might watch this program make it a point to inform themselves of the history of the suffragist movement, not only here, but in England. Because it was a lifelong battle for many of them. And I found in 1950, when I tried to run for the Assembly, women were totally disinterested in politics, and politics is the only route through which we can achieve change, and the only one. Mm-hmm. And I had learned that you had to sit where you cast the vote in order really to be effective. Mm-hmm. And I want women to recognize the importance of understanding the history of the suffragist movement, and then the 60s and the 70s when the women came into their own in many different ways. Mm-hmm. But they need to know the history, particularly the tough history of the years when we were only chattels and had no rights. And we have some now, mm-hmm. not all. We mm-hmm. still have to go on working. Mm-hmm. But I want women to be aware. I was made aware by the president of Mills College. She said, go and look. Mm-hmm. And I did. And mm-hmm. I became so filled with admiration of those early suffragists. And it followed me all through my life.
Mm-hmm. There's been that thread all through your life.
Yes, mm-hmm. there has. Mm-hmm. And a constant renewal of, I subscribed to the very first issue of Ms. Magazine. There are many things in it that are alien to me, uh-huh. But I want to know today's woman. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I do want women to support each other. This was what I found in 1950. It was hard to get women because they thought it was unladylike to display an interest in politics. It wasn't unladylike, it was just unpatriotic not to recognize the impact on our life every day of every bill that is passed in Sacramento and every one that is passed in Washington. So it is so important.
So you want to be remembered for that message?
I do. I want them to echo the words of Mrs. Catt in her message to the new voters in 1920, when the women who worked for it were dead. Mm-hmm. And she said to the new voters, and that was incidentally the establishment of the League of Women Voters, to teach them how to use the ballot now that they had it. Mm-hmm. And she said, women have suffered agony of soul that you can never know, in order that you and your daughters may inherit political freedom. Our hope has been that you will aim higher than your own personal ambition to serve the common good, and that's been my credo.
Thank you, Vera. That was wonderful. Thanks very much. We've been talking with Vera Shultz, the first woman supervisor in Marin County, and a very dear friend of women, as we can see. Thank you and good night.